All right, so we are now recording. So then we can go and see. Yeah, there's Tony. All right, I'm going to move him over. Okay. Great.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. And how are we doing on participants? I think we're just missing John. Yeah.
And Tim?
Tim is the Town of Southborough conference room. So why don't we give this another like 30 seconds and then we'll just go ahead and start.
Okay, I'm going to drop now. I'll be back later.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Oh, I'm just getting a text from John. EDC won't have a quorum without me. We'll be a little late to the meeting. Okay, so I will not wait for him. All right, so then let's go ahead and get started. It's 7:32. We'll call the meeting of the Southborough ARPA Committee to order for March 31st. So I guess let's start with a quick attendance. Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Ms. Rubenstein.
Here.
Mr. Schoner.
Here.
Ms. Luttrell.
Here.
And Mr. Wood is not here. And Mr. Martell is not here. We may get them later, but right now they are not. But we have a quorum otherwise, and me, Andrea Hamilton, I am here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So very quickly, let me just pull up the agenda. Just lose the agenda. Too many windows open. Oh, come on. There it is. Okay. So share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we will, I'm going to skip item 1. The request log is just a standing item. We don't have anything new on it. So no need to discuss. I'm going to have a really brief touch point just to see if there's anything open right now on the survey, public forum, or community outreach. But really, this is the main item today, is starting to get into the meat of the proposals. Take a look through them and start to identify if there are any open questions and what sort of follow-ups we need on each of them. So I hope everyone had a chance to go through and take a look at them. And then I left as a standing item discussing our overall evaluation approach if there's still time. But again, I expect this is going to really take up the majority of the meeting. Next steps. And then I don't believe we have any minutes to vote on today. I think we're actually relatively backlogged in them, so I'll do some follow-ups. I believe the 10th is with John. Tony, you're the 17th, right? And I know you said that next week, not this week. And then Mimi, the minutes from the forum last week. So next week we can do just knock through all of them, maybe. Circle back if there's any unfinished business, and then we'll be open for public comment and making sure we're clear on our next meeting. Good. So again, this I had nothing to review that's new on the log. So then anything anyone needs to bring up related to the survey, it's still open until Monday, right? Everyone I've talked to that I bump into town and I mentioned, oh, there's a survey. So they've all said that they've seen it and they've done it. So I think people are filling it out, which I think is good. Anything else we need to discuss there? Otherwise, I think that one's good. I did talk to Matt, and he said that by next week we probably won't have the compiled results, but we will have the raw data, so that for our meeting next week we can at least start to get a sense of where our results are, and that certainly by the meeting after that we can have the compiled data. How about on the public forum? It was quick. I haven't had any other feedback through email or any other channel. I don't know if other folks are getting anything, because I just do, if we are, I want to make sure we're compiling that somewhere. Is anyone else getting reach outs through email or anything else that we need to be making sure we're capturing? Okay, all right. Then I think we're really just going to end up leaning on the survey. Sorry, because we're getting good responses there. And then this last one, community outreach to get people to do the survey. I saw the mailer that went out on Thursday, which looked great. That was very exciting. It made it out just in time for the public forum, so nobody can say they didn't have ample, thanks, Anne, notice about it. Good. So anything else we need in terms of community outreach to make sure folks are hitting the survey?
The sign is still up at the transfer station, and I went there today and I did see people looking as they pass. So hopefully that's still working.
And Anne, I haven't spoken to Matt in like a week and a half, but have you heard anything from him on how many people have responded at this point?
No, I thought he's done enough for us. I'm not going to bother him
Fair.
too much yet.
Fair. All right. Good. All right, so then let's jump to the next item. Let's get into the proposal discussion. So what I am going to do is I'm going to suggest that we basically stop sharing here. Go through each of the items in the tracker, discuss the proposal, and then keep a running tally of any questions we have so that we have them all logged. Does that make sense to folks? So I just added a column for questions, and we can just kind of run through and make a list of all the questions folks have and then figure out how we want to do follow-ups. Good. Okay. So I recommend we not talk about the tax abatement piece today, because that's not really one that we have a specific org to follow up with. That's going to be more sort of numbers that we suggest at the end. Does that make sense? Okay. Last time we had said we weren't going to pursue wastewater infrastructure or the drainage for Main Street, because those aren't in a place yet where we're ready to, where funding makes sense, right? These two pieces, we said we want to keep to log as feedback we got, but they're not something that we're going to, well, the dog park is as part of the Lundblad field, and then the trash cans is just feedback that we can provide. So that takes us to our first one here, which is the senior center renovations. So again, just high level, right? This is the addition of the front room onto the existing senior center. We have two proposals here. So we have the one that was submitted by the Council on Aging, and then we also have the questionnaire that was filled out by John Parent from Facilities. So we have those two pieces here to review together. And so there's slightly different numbers in both. I think it was the 370 in the Council on Aging one, and then the 400 that came from Facilities. But the Facilities one, I think, included a little bit of extra just to make sure that they didn't go over. So I think that 400 makes sense to be the number we talk about. Joe, I see your hand.
Yeah, I think we can take the higher of the two figures and just add that into what we're doing, because we know that the select board is likely to do it now. They've already allocated money for the architectural piece of it.
Sorry, so are you suggesting we don't even discuss it and we just assume it's done?
Yeah, I mean, if they're already allocating 20,000 of ARPA money to do the architectural piece of it, I think we can pretty much assume that that's pretty much a done deal on the select board. I don't think it's even worth discussing. I think we should just allocate it and move it, because they're going to. If they're not willing to tell us that they aren't going through with it, but they're going to spend money on it already, it doesn't make sense. We might as well just assume that we might as well take the higher of the two estimates to assure it's going to be done and offer it to the select board.
But how do we give it our recommendation then? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Anne.
I'm confused. Do you mean that we should recommend the, what was it, 350 or 400,000? Because we know the selectmen are going to support that?
Yes. They're,
Okay.
if they're already spending the seed $20,000 to put it for the architectural piece of it, I can't imagine that they weren't prepared to move forward with it.
Okay.
So we might as well, I would say let's move on and wait for them to tell us that they're not interested. We'll just add that right to the list and say it's a done deal, because I think we're wasting our time by even having conversation if the select board's already willing to move forward on the project.
But how does that, we're a recommend, go ahead, Tony.
And when you say they're going to move ahead with the project, you mean they're going to move ahead regardless of what we recommend?
Well, it's an assumption on my part, but if they're willing to already take $20,000 worth of ARPA money and throw it into the process of having the architectural piece done for it, I wish they would just come and tell us that they're going to do it anyway, because I think that's what's going to happen, and I think we should just assume that money is spent.
But it's not quite clear what you mean there. So even if they've decided they're going to do it, are they going to do it with town funds or with ARPA funds?
I think they're going to do it with ARPA funds.
Well, it seems the way this process works is this committee, not to be difficult, right? But this committee is supposed to make a recommendation, and the planning board can decide whatever they want to do. So I don't know that there is much for us to talk about on this one, but in my opinion, we're allowed to assess and give our recommendation.
Mimi, I see your hand up.
I agree with Joe. It seems from listening to the select board meetings that they're prepared to allocate funding towards this. But to Tony's point, we haven't been told anything one way or another. So I think we should just, move through our process. And there aren't many questions on this. It seems to be a well thought out. And I have no questions particularly on this, but I think we should just go through our process until we're told otherwise.
Yeah. The select board in principle can do whatever they want with this money, right? They can throw
Right.
away all of our recommendations. They can allocate however they want. The only thing we have as a committee to offer is our recommendation, right? And so if we say, if we don't sort of look at it, I don't know how I can give a recommendation for it, right? And so then we'd be asking the select board to move forward without our recommendation.
Which they may anyway, but
They might, but that's a different thing, right? And that's a
Right.
different way. Like, I hope we were put together as a committee for a reason, because otherwise we're spending a lot of Thursday nights, a lot of time. Joe, I see your hand.
No, I just put it up there and said, we can go through the process, and I agree with everybody. That's what we're here for. I would just throw that to the last thing we do, because I think that by then they may have already made the decision for us. And so we can just put it on the list, not endorsing it or not, or making any decision on it. That's all. I think we have a lot more. I think we have a lot more compelling projects with a lot more unknowns to go through other than that one.
Okay. So do we want to talk about the senior center at the end?
Sure.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So the next one is the premium pay for public safety employees. So this one was specific to the police officers union. I'd recommend we talk about this together with the fire department, and then also maybe have a discussion about whether or not it is possible to move forwards on the premium pay discussion without thinking about others who would qualify for that. Anne, I see your hand.
Do we have, can we ask our consultant what's the status of the state action on premium pay? Because that was going through the legislature. Maybe we should compile a list of questions to ask the consultant, but I think that should be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's a good question. what are folks thought, right? So again, we only have we have submission from the fire department, which was for, and that had a total number of $120,000. We have one from the police department. I don't have a total attached to that, but when I looked and tried to kind of gauge how many police officers there were, it seems like it would be a similar sort of figure. So we're looking about, it's about $250,000 between those two groups. I haven't received proposals from any other groups who would potentially qualify. I don't know. I know, Joe, you'd reached out to Greg to ask, how many teachers are on the town payroll, right? I don't think he responded, or I don't think we got a clear-cut answer.
He responded by sending me the annual report, I believe.
Okay.
And I did go and look in there. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the number is, but it's certainly a lot more than police and fire. And it depends on what also depends on whether you want to include administration and other personnel in the building, not just teachers. So there's certainly a good number in there. And I would say that we should entertain an opinion as to how important we feel it is to include them in any determination that we make in terms of premium pay for police, fire, and town personnel. So
yeah,
I think that's a full conversation in itself, above whatever the figure is or whatever we decide.
Anne?
Has the school department asked for any premium pay?
No, the only two premium pay requests I've had were from fire department and police. And I don't know if there is a reason for that. I don't know if there's funds that have come from others or if that's just who asked.
Maybe that's another question for the consultant, whether that's coming through from the state. I doubt it is, but.
It was really anyone who was in office, right? Or public facing. I don't know exactly what the definition was. We'll say other town employees. So maybe is there a conversation to be had before we get that answer to kind of just the general status on premium pay? Is that one that we want to get more information on that first? And then maybe we can circle back to it next week. Tony?
I don't recall, was premium pay on our questionnaire?
Yes.
I recommend that we wait and see the questionnaire results.
So how about we do a reach out to the consultant and just try to get like some big picture answers on kind of what's going on with the state. And then we can come back once we have some data in hand from the survey next week and see what kind of an additional conversation we want to have around it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to reach out to the consultant or if someone else wants to, however we want to do this. I think we probably will end up with a big list of questions and we'll have to divide and conquer. Do we want to maybe just go through, make the list, and then we can go through and assign a name to everyone to follow up?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So this is also, next bucket is also premium pay. So these go together. Okay, youth and family services. So there are 3 different parts of this proposal. So there is the part-time mental health clinician. There is, and this is one they said that would be managed as a grant-funded position. So it is a head count, but the assumption is temporary, right? It's not someone that they're necessarily looking to add permanently. And I think I hadn't put the $25 to $30 an hour. But if you look at the survey request that they filled out, they did give us a range between $7,800 and $3,100, depending on how many hours we approve. So let me just update that. So it was 100 to 31, 200, depending on how many hours per week, and one versus 2 years. So I think each of these pieces are relatively standalone. So I think maybe we talk about each of them in turn. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, this first one on the part-time mental health clinician. Any follow-ups that anyone had from that? So again, this is not looking to be treated as a permanent headcount, is my understanding. I don't know if that's something we want clarity on, is just to be really, really clear that, you know, this is one, because I know that headcount is something this committee has been really hesitant about. Are there any questions that we have around kind of the nature of this position in terms of its longevity? Joe?
Yeah, I think it, just off the top of my head, I'd say a 2-year term is an awful long time for a temporary position. So it's not that I'm against the premise of doing something in this area, but certainly the price range is, you know, pretty dynamic in terms of, you know, a number or 4 times or 3.5 times the number,
Yes.
and then a 2-year period, and then a 2-year period. So I think in terms of our decision-making process, I'd say we probably would need to pare it down to, you know, a single figure, and, you know, whatever time it lasts, it lasts. And 2 years would tend to almost indicate a semi-permanent moving position moving forward, because if they get used to that kind of, if they get used to having a person on staff for 2 years, it's awfully hard to remove it at some point.
Yeah, so the lower end is for a $30 per hour position at 5 hours per week for 1 year. And then the larger figure is $30 per hour at 10 hours per week for 2 years. And so the question is, can we basically get, what's the need, right? Like, just tell us what you're looking for. Anne?
I don't think they know the need, because the pandemic is technically still ongoing and we don't know what's coming down. And that's probably why there's such vagueness, 1 to 2 years. Are we going to attach dollar amounts to our recommendations? Or are we just going to say we're approving proposals as submitted?
I would think we'd have to attach dollars if we want to be able to come up with a meaningful list, right? Although this one, I mean, it is a really wide range, but the range in terms of dollars is only 20,000, which out of 3 million is relatively small. No, Mimi?
So do we know if this part-time clinician is as a result of pandemic-related mental health needs, and that's why they think it's only going to be a temporary?
Yeah, so that, I'm sorry, it's specifically due to an increase in mental health service requests. Okay. I'm just looking here. It says that they've seen from 2017 to 2021, so across the pre and post, a 64% increase in the number of individuals and families served with mental health support services. That does include the interface referral service piece as well, which we'll talk about next. The goal of this position is also to be a bridge position, because there's such long wait times to be able to get into various treatments. And so I believe they said they are also hoping for this position, I'm just looking if I can find the language, to be to serve as a bridge for folks who are waiting for longer term services. I'm just looking for the language. Anne, your hand's up while I'm looking this up.
I forgot to take it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, so the need for mental health services will not be going away. However, the currently high demand has resulted in issues with access to mental health services. This comes at a time that mental health concerns are becoming increasingly acute and complex, making the bridge services, SYFS, provides of critical importance. Similarly, Southborough Youth and Family Services training and education for parents and caregivers equips members of our community with the skills they need to support their loved ones and gain stability. Like other communities using ARPA funds towards mental health and community support positions, this position will be advertised like a grant-funded position and will be paid until funds have been expired.
Thank you.
So I have whether or not they could provide a single figure. I know to Anne's point, maybe the answer might be no, right? That it's not totally clear what's needed. But it's certainly something we can ask. Joe?
I think it's pretty clear from what you read that we have to put a figure on it. If they've given us a range like this, they just basically flat out and just said, we don't know. This is what we want to fund it for, and it'll last as long as the funds last.
Yeah.
So as much as it lasts as long as much money as we put in and the need is, put to them. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my question is, do they foresee that they would need the full 31,000? I think if the answer is yes, then that's just the number we should be working off of.
Maybe
Does
we
that
should
make sense?
assume that for the time being and see what the rest of our proposals total up to.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this one? Okay. Would there be any benefits it wouldn't, right? Because it's part-time. So that's not something that would be concerning in the funding.
I don't know.
So something
I
that's
would
worth
think it
asking.
would be like a consultant position, not a actual town employee.
It would be like like what's the 1099, 1094, the position where you're your own employee. Is that what you're thinking?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So next to also Youth and Family Services, there's the marketing and outreach materials. So this was $5,000. Okay, to ensure residents are aware of and understand the assistance that is available to them, outreach is critical. Youth and Family Services regularly engage in community outreach to share information with residents on various services we have available. To provide equal access to the information, Youth and Family Services produces information in different languages, which creates additional costs. Having additional funds for marketing materials would enable Youth and Family Services staff to provide more information in different ways at a time that these services are so critical. Any questions about that? And then this one-year contract with Interface Referral Services. So this is this is 20,000 to 25,000 for a one-year contract. They are a free, confidential mental health and wellness helpline for residents of contracting communities. Callers from these participating communities are matched with licensed mental health providers through an extensive database on average within 3 to 4 weeks of their call to Interface. Each referral best meets the location, insurance, and specialty needs of the caller. Southborough acquired its first contract with Interface in 2021 through a generous grant received from the Southborough Community Fund. And I believe as of now, so the school has said that they can potentially match $12,500 to extend. So we go until December 22. The school has offered potentially an additional 6 months to get to the end of the school year next year. But then there's no additional funding right now or for extending it beyond that. Joe, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'd be interested in having information as to how many people have used the service that they know of, so we can sort of gauge the cost per person up until this point.
Hold
I
on.
would.
I've got it. They included that.
While you're looking that up,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say, as I've said before in this committee, which was that we went through Youth and Family Services, we did use that service, and it worked out very successfully for us. So I know that the program does work, and it can work exactly as they state it does. And there has been a big crunch in availability of the service providers. So having a service to do that sort of research to help get you in touch with some service providers that wouldn't necessarily be online in a regular sense. The service does have access to people that that sort of also do part-time counseling, which is where our counselor came from. They worked for an outfit, but they also did some counseling on the side. So I would never have found them. So having that service did help us dramatically.
I think that's good feedback. So I can say Interface served a total of 86 Southborough residents over 11 months in 2021. The helpline did not go live until February, so that's why it's 11. Average cost per referral is $250, which means that Southborough received a value of $21,500 from services in 2021. So it looks like they about matched what they're looking for here. Anne?
I think that awareness of these services is important. I mean, I was not aware that there was such a service to match you with people. I personally know 2 psychologists who have just been overwhelmed with work during this last 2 years. People are very stressed, they need support. And if it's a temporary assist, if it's like a grant, I think, you know, and the numbers seem to match up, that it's important to continue this for a while.
And I think that sort of pairs with the marketing and outreach piece here too, right?
I was addressing the marketing and outreach, making people aware that the help is there.
Yeah. Joe, I see your hand.
You're muted.
Sorry. I think Ann's point is very poignant in the fact that, I mean, that is a considerable cost per use, $200 and $250. So, I mean, although it was great for us and somebody else was paying for it. If you'd asked me up front, the $200, $250, I might have thought a little bit differently up front, but I think that lends itself to the weight of Ann's point, which is that you really need to get people to know that it's there so that people are using it as much as possible. And that might bring down the cost per use a little bit more and make it seem a little bit better.
I'm not clear if, and maybe this is a question. So it says the average cost per referral is $250. So Southborough got a value of $21,500 with the 86. So I think they're saying that the cost of doing a referral is $250, and maybe we pay per referral.
So you think that's the cost on top of the 1-year fee?
That's when that's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, and I think maybe this is getting to the questions we have. I'm not clear that it's a 1-year fee. It might be a pay per is actually kind of what it sounds like. And that might be where this 20 to 25,000 is coming from. I'm just trying to see if I have any more information on that.
Yeah, it's termed a contract though. So maybe it could be a contract plus. It'd be interesting, but this way, it'd be interesting to know.
So we just say that, so we can just ask like a little bit
Yep.
more about the structuring. Is it like a single cost? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. The town pay for each referral, i.e. the town pays $250 for every use, or is it a flat contract fee? And we can, the cost per referral goes down as more people use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm just missing something in this, but just looking to see if they say anything else. Yeah, and again, there does appear to be some money through through this, that the school would be willing to pay to do an additional 6 months into 2022 to get basically cover the rest of the school year. But then nothing beyond that. Okay, any other questions about that one? The referral service? Anne?
I like the idea that someone is partnering in funding this. It's not just the town, that the schools are willing to submit or funds toward it.
Yeah, so let's see, it was $12,500. So then it might be a matter of, so I guess one of the question is, are they looking for the full 20 to 25, or would we be splitting it with the school potentially? Should I add that as a question? Is would it actually just be covering the back 6 months?
That would be my question, yes.
Okay.
It does sound in the proposal, they spend some time matching the insurance location and specialty needs of the caller. So that probably feeds into that, why the fee is so high. Maybe it's not high in the realm of mental health. I don't have experience in that.
Well, and they do, I mean, I'll say, so in addition to Joe, my family is also in the process of using this right now. And it's they both find the counselors, but they also do the initial referral as well. So there's sort of like an intake process where you go through kind of what you need, and then they use that to do the referral too. So it's a relatively comprehensive process.
Yeah. Well, when you think of what it costs for your doctor visit for, you pay your 125 or 150, and then there's the second visit follow-up, and I can see where that's very costly.
Yeah. And so again, I think getting the clarity to, is it the $250 per, and then we just pay per, or is this sort of a contract, like a singular contract? Okay, any other questions on that one? Okay. So the next one is this affordable housing piece that we don't really have a clear submission around. I think some of the SHOPSI proposals get into that a little bit, maybe if we're thinking creatively about them. So I'm going to suggest we just skip this one and go to the next one. Does that work? Okay. So MTC, so Municipal Technology Committee. So they have 4 different proposals that they have put out. The first one is to upgrade the town's Wi-Fi capabilities at specific town facilities. So certain departments are not able to effectively perform their function due to lack of Wi-Fi in critical areas. DPW, for example, is unable to configure equipment without first moving it to another area where there is adequate Wi-Fi signal. And so this is a $250,000 request. And it covers the preliminary assessment, install and testing, and getting things operational. Any questions on this one? The main one I had was just sort of, I know we have the one example of DPW. I was just wondering, I didn't know if there was like a more kind of comprehensive overview that we could get to really understand kind of where this is looking to go and what sort of other problems it is solving. Because right now I just have the one example for DPW, and I don't have a great understanding of like how challenging it is to configure, to have to move equipment to configure things. Anne, is that you talking? Oh, okay.
I know, having worked, I'm not in technology, but in the past, I've converted newsrooms to modern technology. It's a process, and technology really should be updated very frequently. I'm not sure the town has been able to do that. I don't know the history. It doesn't seem like a frivolous request. And maybe just one example was provided. Maybe we could ask for more examples of the struggle. I don't know the Wi-Fi capability in town offices. Is it challenging? Does anybody have experience with that?
Oh, Mimi?
Yeah, I think it's problematic at a lot of places that you have to move around until you can get a strong signal. And in answer to, we probably haven't kept up with technology. I think we just got an IT person like 2 years ago. So we certainly haven't kept up.
Anne, your hand is not up.
I think that communication is very important, and it's been extremely important during the pandemic. It's been the only way we've met. A lot of committees have met. I think that they've stated the case.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so there's 4 different requests that are coming in through MTC. So this one is specific to the Wi-Fi capabilities. Sorry, I'm going out of order here because it's what I have in my packet. We also, there's going to be another one around the updated website, and then the events coordination, and then the interactive conference rooms. So just on Wi-Fi right now. Tony, I see your hand.
I must admit, I have not really dug into, I haven't read this proposal. Do they describe how they intend to spend the $250,000? Is there any real detail?
Yes, I think that's really where I'm getting to, is that it's a relatively big number, comparatively.
It's a big number. It's an oddly round number, frankly. And so I think it would be worth hearing more details about this. And you know, if like, how did they get to $250,000? You know, and some more. You know, the next level of detail of how you know, how is that money spread across what services and equipment. This is an area where I have some expertise, and so if you wanted to assign this one to me, I'd be happy to talk to them about, like, what does this really mean?
Joe?
This started under the last IT director. And I'm sure Tim can probably tell us a little bit more about how this is being formulated, but the number originally, I believe, floated through capital was 200, and that was last year. And then we changed over IT directors, and this is the new preliminary estimate I'm gathering. And he's been pretty much getting everything together, so I'm not surprised that we're not seeing a full-blown detailed estimate. I think this is the best guess at the moment. And if it's not funded by ARPA, the town's going to at some point have to be paying for this. So this is one of those things where getting as good a number as we can and probably recommending this project is probably a good idea, because it's definitely going to be on the town's capital radar, and it's definitely going to have to go through a town meeting if we don't fund it in the next year or two.
So I think for me, it's really just, you know, again, like if I look at some of the numbers up here, 250 is one of the larger ones we're going to see. And in general, the MTC requests are some of our largest ones. Like I think altogether, they probably sum up to be the biggest chunk of money. And so I think if we can just kind of having the detail to really be able to support, you know, as a committee, we've done our due diligence. Yes, this seems like the right number. We understand where it's going to. These are the benefits we think come from it. Tony, if you want to take on doing the follow with them, I think that would be awesome. They might also be a really good, contender to potentially even come in and give a short, 10-minute overview to the committee or something like that.
Please assign that one to me.
Yep. Okay. And none of this is whether or not it's one we should fund or a worthy one or something like that. Just for me, for given the number, I think this is one that we want to make sure like we've got kind of robust justification behind. Any other questions about the Wi-Fi capabilities? Okay, so the next one that comes from them is upgrading the town's website. So this is upgrade the town's website to support easier access to key town services. The current website is old and difficult to navigate. The pandemic has made access to key town services essential. We need to update the town website to highlight the services the town can provide to citizens, including adding features such as subscribe, notifications, easier access to meetings, and key contacts. So really, yeah, it's an overhaul of our town website. And this one is $50,000 to $80,000, and there is some ongoing cost here. It's $500 a year for licenses, and then some additional IT support. So I think I had written, I had a note here that it's probably about $2,000 per year in additional costs that this generates. And that's between licenses and operations and support. I think my just initial here was similar to the one above, is just getting a little more detail in terms of, is this a totally new town website? Like what did kind of functionality and features, just a little more detail on it, I think is what I was looking for. I don't know, Joe.
I would also be interested in knowing, I know that the putting in the new Wi-Fi has a security component to it, and keeping town locations secure and communications. I'd be interested in knowing if the town website is vulnerable as well. So there's a security component and redoing it, not just
Okay.
redoing the interface, but also, the widgets behind it. How are we getting more improvements to the other parts of it?
Any security concerns? Am I capturing that right? Do we want to ask that around the Wi-Fi capabilities as well?
Yes. Yeah, yes, we should get an answer on that too, because I believe that is the case.
And little more detail on additional functionality. Easy. Good. So this does have an added ongoing cost. I don't know if there's anything we want to ask about that. I think it's just the proposal was just that this would then go, it'll go into the IT budget for 2023 on. It's $2,000 a year, which isn't an enormous sum. Is that concerning to anyone and something we should ask about, or does that seem like a reasonable amount that isn't going to be problematic? Tony's shaking his head. He thinks that's fine. He's paying it. He's all set. All right. Anything else on the town website? Okay. Next one here is to implement townwide event scheduling and registration system. So I think in the proposals, this one had an accidental copy paste because the Zoom rooms is twice, but one of the proposals talks about the event rooms. Yeah, so it's here. So it's reviewing SAS event management vendor options, selecting and piloting a final candidate, contracting and configuration. Then there's some training and launch. And then there's also some additional ongoing expense here. There's a subscription that would need to be added to the annual IT budget But I don't have an estimate. No, I do have an estimate. $20 per month subscription plus one time, plus the $70,000 that they're asking for here. 50,000 for implementation, 20,000 for training. So $20 per month. That'll be relatively minimal overall. Any questions on this? So this is sort of the consolidation of registrations, right? So I think this is like right now you go to the separate rec page to sign up for rec stuff, but now it would all happen through one site. I think similarly around like scheduling of, I assume this is for like things like if you're trying to schedule like the Bayville pavilion and things like that. Joe.
Yeah, I'd love to know if this is going to save the town any money, or if we were going to have to spend money on a system like this to upgrade our systems, especially if we're redoing the town website. Is this a necessary thing or is this a want? I think is the question I would have on this one. I just want to make sure that and also the fact if they're going to integrate rec with some other things, does rec want to be integrated? I think some of the department heads might have something to say about where this is going in the direction. So it's not that I'm against it. I just don't know enough to be for it either.
Fair. They capture this right. Will it save the town any money? Is it necessary or nice to have? And then again, because it's sort of integrating multiple departments, do departments want to be integrated, right? Is that the question?
Sure. Yeah.
Or, or have any feedback on, have any feedback or concerns about being integrated into one system?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, when one light goes out, they'll all go out. So I'm not sure that everybody's gonna be on board with that.
And I know Rec just redid their registration system. Like they moved over to some new platform, like I think within the last year or something. Because I kept trying to sign my kid up for a wrap and kept trying to log in with my old password just over and over and over again. It kept yelling at me and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay. Any other questions here? Are there any, I wonder if is there like, if this is adding new functionality, like are there things that we can't currently schedule that this now lets us schedule, or is this basically just like the same functionality that's spread out, but now consolidated somewhere? I guess maybe is a question I have.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think is it gonna crunch all the town calendars into one? That'd be interesting to know. And then who can post on it? So is library calendar now going to be crunched in with, the town events calendar and everything else? I don't know. That's a good question.
Will calendars all be consolidated? Is that sort of all be consolidated, and who can update them?
Yeah, I thought that's where you led me.
Yeah,
I thought it was a very valuable thing to know once you said it.
Yeah. Okay. I hadn't thought about the calendar, if that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay. So maybe this one goes to the question about the saving the town. So like, is this like, Joey, was part of that just like, is this part and parcel of the new town website? Like, are we now maintaining like this must interact with the new town website in some way, I would think, but maybe not. Maybe this is like a totally different backend sort of thing.
It could be a different module. You know what I mean? In terms of, it could be an additional piece of software that could join to what they were thinking about for the website. I don't know.
Yeah. Is this?
I mean, we go back far enough, everything was modularized, and at some point they said, "Oh, well, we'll just try and stick it all together." Well, it's more complicated, but they still are sticking together modules.
Yeah. Let's ask, like, are these two related in some way? Okay. Any other questions here? All right. So the last one here is implementation of interactive conference rooms. So this is us being able to go on Zoom meetings forever.
John,
So implement interactive conference room capabilities or Zoom rooms for better hybrid meetings and continue to improve access to meetings for remote participants. So my understanding of this is as we move forwards, there's been a lot of positive feedback about being able to log into things remotely and not always having to be in person, but that our conference rooms don't really support that. So having some sort of a hybrid conference room where things can be in person while continuing to support folks still accessing things remotely. And so this is a big price tag. This one is $500,000. There is included in this, there's a physical space assessment, an equipment list and confirming pricing, contracting and implementation, and then the launch. And there's going to be some sort of a support agreement that would need to be added to the IT budget long-term. Mimi.
So this is way outside of my narrow sphere of knowledge, but I know that the select board has been talking about an owl that they were going to start testing out for hybrid meetings, and it was short money. I don't, so I'm
An
very,
owl, like OWL, like a bird?
yeah.
Is that the name of a
I'm sure it's an acronym for something.
okay.
What that is. But I think it was like $2,000 for one, and they were thinking of getting, if this one works, getting two, but doesn't bring us anywhere near 500,000. So that's confusing to me.
Tony?
So it's another area where I have some knowledge. And so, yes, an owl is in fact the name of a piece of technology that some people are starting to use for mixed sort of meetings. My only comment, having observed this occur in several life cycles over the last 30 years, you can spend an awful lot of money on a solution like this, and then 5 years later, it's not very helpful. So I personally have serious concerns about spending that much money trying to solve this kind of problem at this time.
So how long-term would the solution be? Would we need to update technology within the next few years?
There's a long list of companies who thought they were going to solve this problem over the last 30 years. And they're almost all gone now.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I'm happy Tony said something on that of that nature. I mean, I thought the price tag on this one was very, very large, and I'm not sure, given the price tag, and we'll find out through this process. But my initial thought at the price tag is that I'm not sure there are going to be enough people in town that actually benefit from this to make it worth this large a price tag of our total amount of money. I mean, it may turn out to be different. We'll learn something different, but at this moment, initially, that's my knee-jerk reaction. And Tony summed up some of the other thing, which is, I mean, we feel a little inconvenience using Zoom, but I'd like to know what the Zoom price tag is for us versus trying to switch to other platforms to solve whatever problems that are perceived to be there. Just off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking.
Right, yeah, I hear that. Are there slightly less optimal but less expensive solutions?
I just want to quickly apologize for being late. We had a quorum
John.
issue on the EDC meeting, so I had to go to that one first. So I apologize.
We missed you terribly.
Welcome, John. So we're going through the proposals and just log in the questions we have. So right now we're looking at the interactive conference rooms. So it sounds like the theme of this one is really kind of like, what's the problem that we're solving? for this much money, right? So that probably there are clunkier but less expensive solutions. But it's really like the price tag on this one is very, very large. And that's, yeah, you'd need a really strong justification for it and clarity that this isn't something that will be obsolete in a couple of years. Joe?
Well, I think Tony brought up a really good point earlier in the meeting, which is I think when we look at the surveys, that may give us a really good indication of how people view these issues and where they think money should be spent. And I think that he's right that may provide us with a perspective later, in a week or two that we don't have now.
That's fair. Okay. Anything else on the interactive conference rooms? Okay. Good. So that was the municipal technology committees. So next we go to DPW. So this is sidewalks. So it is fund sidewalk work from repairs to new installations, prioritize sidewalk work, both repairs and new, based on connectivity and use, anticipated use, new sidewalk work based on DPW sidewalk report, and complete streets. So the request here is 300,000 to 400,000, and that is getting matched up with some additional money. It is the estimate will supplement the roadway money to repair some sidewalks, as well as design and build part or all of a new sidewalk. Dollar amount will lower the need to raise the money through the budget in a future year. Money funded through ARPA will be supplemented with Chapter 90 complete streets and other road maintenance money. So my initial sort of questions here were, do we know where the initial projects would be? And then I also, my strong suspicion is that sidewalks are going to come back really high on the survey. And I almost was wondering if 300 to 400 is too low, and if there's a broader project here that we should be thinking about. Joe.
100% agree. I don't think that I'm not sure that you can put too high a number on sidewalks, which is why, this may be one that we can sort of all agree on and move forward to the next one, knowing that we're going to try and stuff money into that as well that we can moving forward.
Is it
I
fair
agree
to
with
just,
Joe.
yeah, okay. Again, maybe this will come back and the survey results will surprise us, but just looking at past surveys, I would be shocked if this isn't the number one thing that pops up.
I would
The
also like to
activity is
mention,
huge.
What's
I'd also
that?
like to mention, John, one of our neighbors on Parkerville came up to me today when I said ARPA, and they said, I want sidewalks. So.
Yeah. And I think there have historically been a lot of feelings about kind of where the sidewalks end up skewing towards, right? We do a lot of work that sort of focuses in the downtown area. And so I mean, it would be really cool if we can create a project that allows us to connect more parts of town that aren't, historically, haven't historically been getting them.
Oh, I do have one question I would love to have asked of DPW, and this relates to something that I think John and I both talked about earlier, which was the causeways that run to both parts east and south of town, and how hard it would be to actually get sidewalks on them because they run over, reservoir MWRA domain possibly, and we may not be able to widen those road beds to put them in, but it'd be interesting to know what the process would be to get those. Not that I'm advocating those are the projects that we should go with, but I think in terms of understanding where money would go and which sidewalks are done, I think that you brought that up and that's a good point, but also whether those projects could actually be complete, because linking parts of town would involve going through some process to possibly get those through. And
So you're thinking like 30 over the reservoir?
30 and 85. And also, this is sort of unrelated but related. There's also the question of how realistic the Trails Committee's proposal to put a unified sort of hard path bike trail down the railroad tracks from Main Street, West Main to Central, which could also fulfill sort of a similar or purpose to having a sidewalk put across on Route 30, because that would also link that side of town to the center of town. And I would like to hear more from Catherine as to, I don't want to throw seed money into investigating that unless there's a really high probability that could be done. But if it really could be done, then that could be also used as a sidewalk supplement to get easily from that part of town over in Fayetteville over into the center of town, and it would be a good business boost too.
It's been done in other communities, Joe.
So just sort of like, is there sort of that connection point between trails and DPW, right? Because they kind of are solving some of the same problems just in slightly different ways. Mimi, I see your hand up.
Just as an aside, sidewalks and connectivity between the different parts of town is a huge goal for your brand new master plan that should be coming out in the next few months.
Tony?
I was just going to say, I think in the interest of time, I don't think there's any reason really to talk anymore about sidewalks. We know everyone wants sidewalks. It's going to be near the top of the list. We can confirm it when the results come in, and then we can decide how much we want to allocate. It almost doesn't matter what number we pick. We're just going to help improve sidewalks.
Okay, let's move on from sidewalks then. Next one is the premium pay, which we already discussed above. Then the purchase of the 600 voting devices or the clickers. So this is $18,600 for electronic clickers that would allow voting to be electronic, in person, and it would also make it anonymous at town meeting. So the only question I had, because I've talked to Jim, I was talking about when I was doing some of the stuff for the thing we did last week and how to not violate open town meeting laws. And just in talking to him, we talked a little bit about this, and it sounds like he may be renting some clickers already at a good price. I'm wondering if I've just some follow up on whether or not this is something that he wants to allocate now, or if we already kind of have a temporary solution in place that we need to do first. Joe, I saw your hand go up.
I believe the initial plan from his office was that he found and made an agreement, if they moved in this direction, that he would be able to rent them for a meeting, and then that would be wrapped into a purchase price. As far as this committee goes, I know Tim and Tony, this seemed a little bit more like a third rail kind of an issue as far as funding these things. And given their reluctance and the sort of lower price tag, I would be just assumed to kick this, not necessarily weigh in on this at all, and not necessarily include it in our recommendations, and let the select board sort this issue out with the people to vote and the people that it would offend.
Tim, I see your hand.
That makes sense to me, Joe. The thing I'll add is that last night at the advisory meeting, Jim did mention that he plans to take this before town meeting and put it to an actual vote. And I don't know his time frame for that.
Okay, Joe.
Sorry, it was left up from before. No.
Okay. So we can get some clarity on sort of the steps that Jim is anticipating, and then think about whether or not it makes sense to have this then be something that the town purchases through a warrant article or somewhere else rather than through the ARPA money. Is that sort of the question, is to sort of understanding what does the timeline look like? It's a relatively small dollar amount comparatively. So it might be something that could be a carve out down the road from ARPA funding if town meeting votes and says they want these things. But okay, anything else to talk about here? I can follow up and get sort of where we can follow up and do kind of the timeline from Jim. Okay. All right. ADA compliances. So I want to just be clear, we have two separate ADA compliance requests. One is coming from recreation that is specific to things under their purview. So there's some water fountains and picnic tables and things like that. And this is separate from facilities. And within this, there's $50,000 that is looking to be funded through a warrant article. And this would be an additional 50 on top of that. And to make it more confusing, the 50 that was originally in the warrant, the select board has said they're going to use ARPA funds for. So effectively, we would be adding an additional 50 to that for 100 total that would come out of ARPA funds for ADA upgrades. So this is in response to a self-evaluation that was done, and there's just a laundry list of things to do, and this money would let us start picking off some of the smaller ones and just getting them done. Any questions here to bring back to facilities? I don't believe he specifies exactly what the money would go to. It's just sort of smaller pieces off the checklist. I don't know if we think it's important to know specifically what it would go to.
My understanding in the ADA report was that we could probably throw all of ARPA money into just fixing everything that was identified. I have faith in John that if he's asking me for 50,000 to do what he needs to do in the buildings and get the initial ball rolling, I'm confident in that he will do good with the money.
Okay. Is there any additional questions or follow-up we want to do here, or move on to the next one? On to the next. Okay. Okay. Recreation, Lundblad Field. So this is a field near Neary. I don't know does anyone know exactly which field it like, can someone like describe what the field is? Is it one of the soccer fields at Neary, or Tim, I see your hand up.
It's the one up top.
The one
the
up
top of the hill.
top.
Right, so at the entrance to Neary,
Mm-hmm.
on the very left, there's that field.
Yes, okay, got it.
That's Lundblad.
Okay.
The one that used to be a dump, it's a landfill. It was a landfill. Now it's a wonderful soccer field.
Yeah. Okay. I can picture it now. All right. So it's now looking to be the soccer field plus a multi-use facility. So it says multi-use facility would still maintain a playing field for soccer, lacrosse, and other sports, but also introduce an official town dog park, community seating, and picnic space for gathering on the same grounds. The creation of a community dog park meets a goal of the town-wide master plan while providing a safe space for physical and mental health in the community through active recreation and open space. This also expands the possibility of community events run and sponsored by the town for our residents. This funding request would directly offset the construction costs of the facility, and we don't have a number yet attached to it. There is a feasibility study happening that will be completed by the end of April. So we will get numbers end of April. Tony, I see your hand.
Having coached many games up there, it's not clear to me how all that fits. So I was wondering if these people can give us a diagram that shows what goes where up there.
That's a really interesting point. And then the other point I think that might go hand in hand with that is there's no parking really. And there's very little accessible parking. And anybody who may have a physical disability, getting out of your car, and then in particular getting up the hill into the park, it could be very difficult. So I'd like to see a map too.
Would also, right, I mean, this goes this would be at Neary, right? We also have a significant project that we're potentially talking about at Neary in the next couple of years. So one of my questions is, how do those two things interact with each other, right? Because I assume parking would be part of that whole potential future complex. See if any other questions on this one. I would also just like, so if we turn this into a community space, right? It is like on school grounds, right? And I know things like, right, like we've got like the only tracks we have in town are on school grounds, right? And so it limits the use because you can't really use it if, you know, school's in session and things like that. So I don't know if we would have similar kind of restrictions here where, you know, if you want to bring your dog to the dog park in the middle of the day, but it's, you know, a Monday and school's in session, does that, I mean, how do you sort of have that kind of shared use with a school facility? Joe?
Yeah, well, I think the concerns that have been brought up are very realistic about parking. I don't think Lundblad isn't necessarily really part of that school property. I mean, it's really sort of detached a little bit up near the road. And
But
there's
it's the
also,
one that's right on the, like if you
but
park
it's,
in the back
but
of
if
the
you,
Neary parking lot, the one you're looking at there, right?
no, if you park at the nearest parking lot, that's the Petrie. That's the initial soccer field down next to the parking lot. Lundblad is up on the hill, up about 20 feet, 30 feet of brush, and it's up on top, right next to the road. And then you have the only real parking you have outside of the school parking lot is over there next to the tennis courts, which might also be considered detached from school property as it's across the access road. But I think you bring up a good point, knowing what is considered school property and what's not, and what's considered usable and what's not. But I think those tennis courts are used during school times in the mornings and other times. So those might be another piece that's also semi-detached from the schools.
Just imagining dogs barking all day long. um, any other questions for this one? My initial thought on this one is it feels really big and beefy and something that should have weigh in from the town, but okay. Anything else that we'd want to reach out and get more clarity on?
You could ask if that includes a rehab of the actual field itself. I think it was John that brought up the fact that it's originally that it kind of has a little bit of wave in it. Not enough for a surfboard, but maybe a longboard could kind of.
If you're
yeah.
standing on one side of the field and I'm on the other, I can't see you.
Yeah, I mean, it
It's
says
a
the
little
original plan was just to do repair of the field. So I assume that is still part of it, but we can certainly ask the question. Just looking here.
I'm actually reliving that field from like 15 years ago, and it needed some love then. For the good memories.
Well, the field also be fixed as part of this work.
What about CPA money?
So it says Recreation Department currently does not have any dedicated funding source for this project outside of the allocated town meeting feasibility study funds. However, this project does qualify for Community Preservation Act funds under the open space and recreation category. Additionally, the Friends of Southborough Recreation would be a champion of this project and could be approached for additional funding support. John.
Thank you. When we finish with this and we make our recommendations and we send it off to Jennifer, I believe her name was. Will she be able to tell us? I know she's going to be able to tell us if there's other grant monies available. Would she also let us know if things qualify for CPC or CPA funds?
I don't know. I don't know what her full purview is. I don't know if anyone else here knows.
I guess what I was thinking is if once this is done, if we could send it to CPC as well for them to review to see what could potentially fall under CPC, CPA funds. As well as her, if she can't tell us, I'm sure CPC and CPA could.
Joe?
I think that's a wonderful idea. The one caveat I'd probably put, at least to this committee, is that, you know, most of those CPA expenditures still have to be put through town meeting. So they're still going to have to go. They're going to have to go through a full approval the way any normal expenditure would. So it's a matter of, you know, with these projects, it's going to be a matter of how much grassroots support they have among people that go to the town meeting. So and that applies to whether we decide to put funding towards it or, you know, the select board does, because I think you're right that that's going to be a fairly good price ticket, whatever that comes in at. None of the field stuff comes cheap. So it'll probably, even if we decide to put partial funding towards it, it's still going to need money from somewhere else, I'm betting.
Is there a question that I should be adding? Or are we good to, do we want to keep moving on? All right. Okay. So the second rec department request is additional is the second ADA upgrades, right? So again, this is separate from the facilities one. It's $20,000 and it is for ADA upgrades. So the plan will introduce ADA compliant picnic tables at the Fayville Playground Pavilion and Townhouse Playground. We will also remove 3 water fountains and replace them with ADA compliant water bottle filling stations. These stations are located at Neary School Fields, Fayville Playground, and Woodward School and Cohate Fields. Request would allow us to check off the smaller items of the entire ADA assessment as they pertain to the recreation fields. So kind of similar to the one from facilities, is starting to tick off some of the smaller ADA compliance pieces. Any follow-ups or questions to that one? Anne?
Are we under any kind of mandate to do this work? I mean, I know it's supposed to be done, but have we actually been ordered to do it?
It's a good question. I don't have an answer there. Is that worth asking on both the ADA compliance requests?
I mean, have we been given a
Certainly ask
time
the question,
period?
but I'm almost certain the answer to that is no.
Okay.
And I believe this is all from a self-assessment that we did, right? This isn't like an outside company or the government coming in and doing an evaluation, but I think it's worth asking the question. Okay. Board of Health is next, or any other questions on this one? Okay. So let's move on to Board of Health. So there's a handful of different requests here. So the first one is the Greater Boroughs. I keep saying it's the public health escalation, but that's not. It's the Partnership for Health. And so this is it is $5,500 that's to be used as part of a living wage, cost of living increase for staff that is shared across a couple of different towns. So it would be each town would contribute for that raise across both 2023 and 2024. So the 5,500 would be split across 2 years, and is Southborough's portion of that, is my understanding. Yeah, we are part of a Greater Boroughs Partnership for Health and Staff serving the 4 towns, and they're due for cost of living increases. There are limited funds in the grant to provide staff for a cost of living increase. This would be used if the other towns in the partnership would contribute their share as well. So that's what this is. Any questions here? No? Okay. This one, staff funding for a health director.
Hey, Andrea,
Oh, yep.
Andrea, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry,
Dave,
go ahead,
I'm
Tony.
sorry. I think
Yeah,
I
no,
mentioned
go ahead.
I needed to drop off at 9. I have a conflict, unfortunately, so I need to go, guys. Have a nice evening.
All right, if you have any other questions or comments, you can always email them over to me, and I'm gonna assume you're gonna pick up the MTC piece when we go and start doling out
Yes.
work.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the health director is it is a full-time position. It's supposed to get, sorry, I'm trying to find the language around it. It's to phase the cost of 2 full-time positions over a period. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to. So, all right, it doesn't matter. There's a request for a health director. It's across 2 years. So the first year is looking for $50,000. The second is $51,824.66. The $50,000 for fiscal year 23, the first one has already been allocated by the select board. So that one's out of our purview at this point. So my understanding is that on this one, it's just the question about the fiscal year 24, the 51,824.66. So I don't know if there's any additional questions there. Do we want to ask about the long-term plan for the funding? I believe that there is a thought that there will be sort of a long-term consolidation maybe across towns in granting. I'm just trying to see if I can find it.
I don't think there's any progress on regionalization.
Okay. Do we want to ask what the progress is on regionalization? Is that worth asking? Yeah.
I have to go back and look at the budget again, but I'd be surprised if this wasn't in the warrant. So is this a backstop in case town meeting doesn't appropriate it?
So this one was really weird. It was in the warrant, and then it came out of the warrant and became an ARPA request. And then when we allocated money to reduce the tax burden, and the select board said that they were going to only wanted about $150,000 to cover, it went back into the warrant and became part of the $50,000 that was getting covered by this, or the 150 that was getting covered by this. So this one is slippery and has moved around a lot. I'm a little confused as to sort of what the overall intent has been, but fundamentally at this point, it has been allocated out of ARPA funds.
Yeah, I guess my question would be to the select board, you know, is it their intent to fund this no matter what? Because if so, we can just move on.
Yeah. So the first 50 is gone. There's another request for 51 for 24. And I assume if we're funding it for the first year, then it would need to get funded for the second year, but
I just, don't understand why we would be funding it all the way out in 24 without asking town meeting. Just, it boggles the mind.
Let me ask that. Why would the FY for funding not go to town meeting? Well, is that the question?
Right.
Okay. Any other questions on this one, or do we move on? All right, we got half an hour. Let's move on. This is per diem vaccinations clinic staff. This is for fiscal year 23 and 24 to fund ongoing vaccination clinics in town. I feel like this one fulfills the absolute complete intent of what this money is originally for, so I don't have any questions about it. I don't know if anyone else does. Joe?
I think the only question to be asked is the schedule under which it will be spent, and when they anticipate it being spent.
So there's 3,500 for fiscal year 23, 3,000 for fiscal year 24.
Okay, so the money, if they don't use it to allocate that, then the money would fall back to the select board to assign.
Yeah, and it's a small number. Do you want any more clarity onto the timeline, or are you good with that?
Like I said, I look at this as they're going to spend it on what we ask, or they're going to put it to something else at this
Yeah.
point.
Septic files. So this is two separate requests, but they kind of link together. So the first is to digitize current septic drawings. And then next is for software. However, the software doesn't exist yet. So the digitization of files has a large amount of paper files for septic plans and would need labor costs for scanning documents and holding digitally. And then the septic software, in line with recent software for food and housing inspections recently obtained through a public health excellence grant, we are interested in purchasing septic software when that is available. Joe.
I guess the two questions to ask are, is it really necessary that we digitize the septic plans? What advantage is that to the town in general, other than just organization on the, to the office? And I do have, unless there's a really good plan for software, I don't see us funding software development. It's a very iffy business in most cases. So
does the software exist? If not, what is the plan for making it exist?
yeah, I mean, if it's some sort of matter, if it's a solid matter of developing it off like Google Docs or something that could be readily done by, our tech staff, that's great. If it's something that you're going out of house to develop, one thing, I don't think 12.5 is going to do it. And two, I really don't want to sink money. It's like sinking money into studies. Unless we have a 100% chance of an outcome, I don't know that we should be putting money down that rabbit hole.
Joe, I just assumed that they were going to buy software.
So I think that's an open question right now because I don't think the software exists right now, is my understanding from the way this is written.
And that's what I had heard. I don't know if there was just from you or heard from you and somebody else that it didn't exist. And maybe that's why I'm so skeptical.
If it doesn't exist, Joe is completely correct. You're going to have to add at least 1 0 and another multiplier to that figure. And then the other question I would have is, if it does exist and they're going to buy it, is this something that we, is going to go on a local server or something in the cloud? Because our IT group is putting together a plan to get us not entirely, but more cloud-based. So, and then
go ahead.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, I mean, are they even talking to Jason? Right. I mean, IT should be involved.
So the septic software has not been developed, so there's a chance that if a viable product was not developed in the next 2 years, we would take that off of our request.
So
Yeah,
we,
my assumption is they are expecting there to be a product to purchase, right? Because otherwise, again, I think you guys are absolutely like $12,500 doesn't get you custom software. But
Yeah.
I'm unclear on
I
that.
also-
Yeah, Joe.
I also don't see leaving this money in limbo for 2 years, waiting to see if it happens. It's not a big enough ticket item to even consider. Let the town buy it later.
Anything else you want to move on from this one? Okay, let's keep going. National Grid property in downtown Southborough. So this one's still remains kind of tricky for me conceptually because it doesn't really have an owner. It's just sort of a property purchase recommendation. And I don't know if that's something that's easy for the town to do or not. So I don't, and since it doesn't really have an owner, I don't know who would follow up with questions. Joe.
Actually, I had a question for John, because I know that he sort of mentioned this parcel earlier. Is this the one down on the east side, down below J&J and Falcone? Is that it? Or it's on the north side? Or yeah, it's on the north side.
It's
you
right
remember?
behind the pizza place.
Okay, so it's the north side. All right.
Yes,
Thanks.
literally, like, you know, the back parking lot behind
Yeah.
Southborough House, it's right back there.
Okay.
So if we have I don't quite know what to do with this one. I'm not saying we shouldn't consider it. There's no kind of owner to it, so I don't know where this one goes for
It would be owned by
questions.
it would be owned by the town. It could be used for pretty much anything. It could be used for parking, future. You could sell it. You could use it for green space. You could use it for so many things. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I know it was put on one of the bills in the past that we were appropriated the money to purchase it if the bill went through. I don't know if that ever happened or anything like that, but it's a very limited piece of property downtown that could potentially, you know, be for parking. It could be green space. It could be a sense of place. It could be, you know, right now most of the septic systems are passing downtown, but God forbid that Mr. Kwan doesn't allow anybody to tap into his thing by Southborough Medical or anything like that. You could put a small wastewater treatment underground there like they did in Weston. It's just a good little piece of property that I think should definitely be considered one way or the other. My personal opinion.
Mimi?
My question is whether the town can purchase real property without town meeting approval.
I don't think they can, Mimi, but I think they could get town meeting approval saying it was going to be used with ARPA funds. I think. I'm not positive though on that. Approval to buy the piece using that.
So who does this again, I think comes back to sort of my like
The-
logistics question, like who can help us with this?
It would be the select board. They
Selectmen.
would be the ones
Okay.
who can negotiate.
If we're
Joe?
gonna ask questions of the select board, at least if we're gonna pass them on, you could just pass on what they plan on, what they have on their minds to spend ARPA money on already, so we can adjust our budget when it comes to what items are on it and what we have room to consider, because they're already moving money and preparing to do projects, and so it'd be nice to know what's on their mind so that we can adjust our budget and our moving forward the things that we can put in it.
I agree.
Yeah,
with Joe.
I have asked that and I have not gotten an answer. I am sure they will say that we really like the senior center. But when I've said, well, also is the money committed? It's no, you guys thing, but maybe move it up. But maybe so I don't think that's gonna get us any sort of
Fair enough. They're politicians,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. I have asked that a couple times because It's clear there's some stuff that's already done and it would make our lives easier if we knew, but I don't think we're gonna get that. Okay. So just the logistics of how to purchase, of how we would purchase this. Are there any questions around like, I don't know why, but I'm just having a hard time like trying to think about how we like effectively balance this one against other things because it is so open, but maybe it just is what it is and that's all there is to it. Joe?
I think the real problem we have here is that we need a better number, and we really need for the other side to be pitching something at us. So, how we can get, if there's a conduit by which we get National Grid to pitch something at us is the way that I think this has to be handled. I know, as has been batted around here, we're not supposed to originate. It's sort of on our board, but we can't originate a number for that, I don't think. So that has to be done in other spaces from other bounds. And if the select board wants to get National Grid to throw us a real number, or something more tangible than this, because otherwise I can't see funding something I have absolutely no idea how to fund. Even if it is, John's right, and it's the best thing since sliced bread, I just it's tough.
And the more we talk about it, the higher it goes.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's yeah,
but
but I think I have sort of the similar kind of like again I have absolutely no like opinion that this is a bad idea. I just don't feel like I have like clarity to like who's driving it, who wants it, what it is, how are we making sure these numbers are defined, and that's just sort of where I get sort of stuck on this one. But maybe there's just sort of a brief conversation to be had with the select board. I know we've only got a few minutes left here, so I don't want to belabor it. Kind of about like, is this
I'd
something
reach out to the
that,
select board and ask what they think on that,
yeah,
and if get a pricing on it, if that's something that even entertain.
yep. Okay. Do we want to leave that one as is? Because I think there's a little bit more work to be done around it. Okay,
Sure.
let's move on. Historic. So they are looking to do a series of signage in downtown to mark different historic locations. $26,000. Any questions here? John, was it you who thought that there was alternative funding for this? Because I have that there's no alternative funding.
I know there used to be, I don't know if it's still available. It was under the shared streets. It could have
Okay.
been part of that, but because they were looking for, you could get for signage and sense of place. But I don't know if that money is still available. What's nice is once we go through this and Jen looks at, she might be like, oh, that's there for there.
Joe, see your hand.
I'm sure that like a lot of things on this list, you could get CPA money for it if it was voted through a town meeting.
Are there any questions about the proposal itself? It looked relatively straightforward.
I have no questions. Yeah, it was very straightforward.
Yeah, it's signed. It seems very clear and it could be executed pretty quickly. Okay, move on. This is on tax relief. I think this also kind of runs up into the Shopsy part. So let's I would say let's move off of this one right now. This audit support piece again, so this is $5,000 that's towards an audit that's triggered by the ARPA money that's already allocated out. I don't think there's anything to talk about here. Okay, Southborough Community Fund has $50,000 to do a series of mini grants in the areas of education, arts, and culture and environment in Southborough. Mini grants are $500 to $5,000. Yeah, they do small grants. Look, I did take a look at kind of some stuff that they've done. It looks like there's a heavy focus on sort of education and giving small grants to teachers for things in classrooms. Yeah, that was any questions here? So there were two proposals. So this was this one, and then one from Shopsy that both would have be doing like sort of small direct grants. Um, one thought I had, and maybe this isn't something that needs to be talked about now, is whether or not any of those can be kind of like we can add them to include anything that covers some of our other priorities. So again, when I think about some of the stuff we've had around like other kinds of like economic relief, these seem like areas where maybe we could cover some of that stuff. I think the Shopsy one is maybe more prime for that than this one, but it's just something I thought about. Joe.
Yeah, and the Shopsy ones, I think there's some good in some of them, but there's also somewhere where I think they're looking to do studies of things, and I'm really hesitant to spend money on those because the results are very intangible. For instance, redevelopment at 21 Highland. I mean, I'm on that committee now. That unless the town commits to doing affordable housing, you're just sort of throwing money in a trunk. And there is still some other funding possible for that through like CDAC and some others. They do some seed funding for things like what they're talking about in the range of 10 to 20,000. So that and studying our own bylaws, I'm not sure is, a place that we want to stick money when we have, a zoning board that looks into those sorts of things. And I'd prefer them to spend money on it if that's in their, because I think that's more in their purview to do. But
So I'm
other than that, I
thinking,
mean,
yeah.
adjusting economic impacts, I think that's very much in our preview and in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, so so this one and this one are kind of like the two proposals we got that are kind of some sort of like we have some money, you person have a need for some reason, and you can come to us and we will give you some amount, small manageable amounts of money to solve a problem, right? And so just thinking about, some of these areas, like, right, when we talked about like small business relief, direct economic relief, property tax mitigations, things like that, right? Like those were sort of the two people that came forward as sort of potentially being able to solve some of those. And maybe we should move on to Shopsy because maybe the Southborough Community Fund was a little bit more targeted, right? Because it's education, arts and culture and environment. But again, those were the sort of the two areas I saw as maybe being able to support some of these other goals that I don't think we have great solutions for yet. So anything in particular around the
I think Marianne had her hand raised. She might have a comment on this one.
Sure. Let me see if I can get to participants. Marianne, I'm gonna promote you. Go ahead.
I sit on the Taxation Aid Committee, and we basically do help people. We have applications that people put out, and there are certain parameters that they have to meet when they apply for these taxation aid monies. And if you do support, I think the one area that says support homeowners with their property taxes, that may be a place where you could let's say, put some of that money into our taxation aid fund, because this is basically a donation organization. We don't take any money from our town taxes or anything like that. It's all donation. So, we've gone through, we've gotten a little bit of money from the town trust fund, and we did apply to the Southborough Community Fund, but they did not give us any money at all. They asked us to go, to the town trust fund, and so there is a need. We almost doubled our participants this year from the previous years. So if in case you do want to place some money into helping people with their taxes, that may be one place you want to look at.
Yeah, that's helpful. Would it be possible to even just like sort of put a note together in an email to send to me so I have something kind of
Sure.
Just written down about that? That would be useful, because that is one area we've been looking to try to figure out how we can help.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marianne. Okay. So I know we're getting to the end here. So I will leave this here then, right? The mini grants, if I don't think there's any additional questions. So coming into the SHOPSy ones here, so there were 4. So a couple of these I think touched on areas that we had previously said that we were going to pull out because we weren't in like the right place for them. So in particular, I'm thinking the wastewater one. We had said we weren't really in a position to start doing wastewater work yet. I don't know if this is significantly different than kind of what we have been talking about before. I don't know. I know, Mimi, I think you've been more involved in the wastewater stuff here. Is this significantly different than anything we've been talking about previously, or is this, should we pull this off the list? This is feasibility study to determine capacity for implementation of wastewater treatment along Route 9 to increase capacity for economic development and potential affordable housing development.
John, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have a grant to do that already.
Yeah, we have I think it's $45,000 right
Okay.
now that just starting to, just went through today, I think, and they're gonna be starting on that
Okay. So this one, we won't consider?
for now, yeah. And, I think it's there because honestly, I think it's gonna be more than a $50,000 study that's gonna be needed on Route 9. I think there's a lot of issues that are gonna need to be figured out and overcome over there. So maybe maybe we could keep it on for extra things, but the grant, I think that's just a piece of what we're gonna need to find out of that. Because right now, Deer Island's at capacity, so we can't tap into that. I'm hoping that pretty soon we'll have a meeting to discuss what we want out of this grant, of the
Is this
feasibility study.
the Community One Stop for Growth grant? Is that the one we're talking about?
No, it's the EEA grant. I don't know what that's an
It says
acronym
that,
for.
okay, it says that EDC has an application for a funding source in right now.
That's
For
another
that
one. That's a different one we're trying to get. We got one grant already from the EEA that I think was like $45,000 for a wastewater study on 9, but I don't think that's gonna be enough. This is gonna be a bigger project that we're gonna need, hopefully get the one-stop grant and then, some type of a mass work
All right.
grant to figure out. This is a multi-year.
Okay, so maybe I can just ask the question, is this already covered? Okay, so going through quickly, because I know we're almost out of time here. Feasibility study to identify any regulatory issues presented in the current zoning bylaws negatively impact affordable housing development and creation of accessory dwellings. The study should include an analysis of town-owned parcels available for potential build out. So this is a $50,000 request, so this is looking at our zoning laws. I know, Mimi?
So a couple things. The SHOPSy just did a housing production plan, and there were recommendations on zoning changes in that. The same with the ZAC did several years ago, looked at our zoning bylaws. So I don't think that we need a feasibility study. I think we know. The areas that could change in our bylaws have already been identified.
There have already been studies looking at this. What would this do in addition or something? Is there a question there, or do we think it's just done? What additional information would this provide? Is that the question?
I guess so. I'm hesitant to do feasibility studies with this also.
I would
mean-
agree. I would agree completely.
There's been numerous studies done on that. The information's there, like Ms. Luttrell said.
Is there a question that we want to ask, or do we think that this is just not something we're looking to consider?
You could ask them if they're hoping to find any different information than we probably already have, but I think it's pretty done.
Okay, I'm gonna
There's
ask the
been,
question.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe there's something we're missing, but if not, we can just sort of button that out, and then assuming there isn't, then that one's can be done. Okay, I want to run really quickly through what's remaining here. Funding to support homeowners impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, potential to supplement a one-time needs-based abatement of property taxes for residents who are able to prove hardship status. So it's a, a needs-based. So my question for this one is this something where we could potentially support things besides just the property tax abatement, right? Because I think that's sort of, we already know we're doing some assistance to property taxes over the next few years. And to me, this seems like an opportunity where we can start hitting maybe some of the non-property owners in town. So wasn't sure if they had the ability to consider things outside of just property tax. Tim?
Yeah, I'd like to understand more of the cause behind this. I really understand the cause behind the need to give relief to property owners. And that's really because, and if you're not aware, you'll be hearing about it more at town meeting. The disproportionate valuations of residential property versus commercial property have really changed the dynamics because we're a single tax rate town. And the percent increase of our taxes for residential homeowners is going up because of that. And it's solely because of the pandemic. And a lot of what we're trying to do in terms of relief is to offset that. In fact, on a year-over-year basis, I think the tax rate for commercial properties might even go negative for them year over year. The change in property values have been so extreme. So helping people deal with that is part of the reason why we're assigning ARPA money, right?
Right, but that's different than this, right? There's like, let's keep the property tax increase under 5%, which is that first bullet that we've all sort of said we want to do. This is now going into a sort of a needs-based, right? I mean, this is different than let's all just not have more than a 5% increase in tax. I think that goes to what you're saying, Tim. If there's something additional that we're looking to do for folks, that I think is this bucket.
Is this okay? So is this the non-property tax, send out a check to everybody, or is this specific needs based by application? For example, what the Public Trust Commission does.
So this would be managed by Shopsy, right, or someone that Shopsy would partner with. So this would be a needs based applications based.
So I'm kind of curious, why would Shopsy be involved when we already have a commission on public trust funds that we could probably just fund? I mean, they're already taking applications for things like if people are impacted and they, by the higher cost of energy or home or heating oil or anything like that, there's a process in place. So why wouldn't we just utilize that?
Joe?
I think I understand. I think you bring up a good point in the sense that I think we do have several requests, and there are obviously multiple conduits to be considered for this particular avenue. And I think that should be an ongoing discussion as to which avenues are most effective and why. And that might be the question to really be asked of Shopsy, is why them as a conduit for this, and how are they going to administer it versus other organizations in town. I think that's where we are.
To be really clear, this is the only proposal we have currently from anyone to do this. We have no other proposals from any organization offering to do this. This is the only one.
I understand the proposal part, but we have had conversations within committee of different entities that do this. And I think that, it's within our purview to decide which entity would be best, given that we have a proposal for money for a purpose. We could determine that whether this or another avenue is more advantageous to fulfill that purpose, I think, is within our purview to do.
John?
I'm on Shopsy, and I don't think we'd care where that money went to if you could put that to fund the trust fund. I mean, the trust commission for that, but I think you're going to have a higher need in the next year or so. That I think you're going to have people asking for help. So it might not be a bad idea to put it in the trust commission. I don't think Shopsy, I could be wrong, but you can reach out to Dorian, was thinking that they'd take over like that $70,000 and manage it. I think they were just looking for it to go into a bucket somewhere.
Can we ask if Shopsy has a recommendation for who would administrate if they're not the ones doing it?
Yeah. We're having a meeting on the 6th, so I can bring it up then too. If it hasn't been answered by then.
And then can I also ask, can this serve other needs beyond tax assistant?
If it went into, I don't know if I'm muted or not. If it
you're-
went
you're
into
talking.
if it went into the trust commission, it could be used for lots of things.
Okay. 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 Good.
Ooh.
Again, I know we're real late here. Let's see if we can knock through this and then we'll take 5 minutes just to get through the rest of our agenda here. Feasibility study to determine the potential build out and development of the South Union School at 21 Highland Street.
I think that's totally premature. I don't think we should. I think we should just skip that and move on to the next one.
Anyone disagree with that? Okay. We talked about wastewater. All right, last two trails. So the first is the Peninsula Trail. I was trying to visualize this. I think it crosses the reservoir. Is that right? It kind of connects the like, or maybe it was entirely on the other side of the reservoir. I don't know if anyone's more familiar with than me. I was having trouble seeing it in the picture.
I think the Peninsula Trail is the one that they want to do at the end of Central Street by the lights. And then you put in some parking there and it goes all the way out along the, it's paved for about, I don't know, a quarter mile. And then there's like a pump house out there. And then there's a dirt road and it goes all the way down to beyond to the dam. And I think they're trying to connect back there. That's the Peninsula Trail. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I
Mimi,
think
you
it's
had your head up. Oh, sorry.
part of the Burroughs Trail Loop. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
I was just having trouble picturing exactly the stretch that was getting covered.
Yeah, I think that they need to figure out, like, it's to expand like for parking and things is what a lot of that cost is for.
Well, it's a significant trail expansion, right? So it's almost 2 miles.
yeah.
It's a paved portion, right? There's accessibility. There's a lot of different pieces.
I think that included a bridge or included some apparatus as well.
Yes.
Some infrastructure in that
Yeah.
in that project.
Yeah, and I guess I was trying to figure out like again, I could see that it was like by like the bridge that crosses the reservoir. I couldn't totally visualize like, is it on the like far side of it? Does it actually cross the reservoir? But maybe that's not important for right now. Do we have any questions or follow-ups? The one I had was just if there are any use restrictions since there is a paved spot. I was wondering because they talk later in the next piece of their proposal, they talk about how there's going to be created like the only place that'll be allowing bikes. So I was just curious if like bikes would be allowed on this stretch or things like that. I don't know. That was my question, is if there were use restrictions on this piece.
There was a pretty detailed itemized list of different costs. How much of them are absolutely necessary, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, not knowing the trail well enough doesn't tell me how each piece is going to be spent. But
Yeah, because then it goes right, because it goes all the way to the Sanofi parking lot. So the other question I had, because again, just looking at it, I was trying to figure out like what part of town it serves. Because if I'm like picturing it going to Sanofi, I guess my question was, is this like primarily serving like Framingham, or like what part of Southborough does this give
No.
easy access to?
It would give easy access to the north side over at Central Street. You go in there and it's about a 3-mile hike all the way down. It comes out by Sanofi, right? By the dam. And then they want to build a little bridge that will connect it to the other side over by Palmenter and bring you along that side as well.
So we're gonna go across. But again, if we're coming down Parmenter, isn't that mostly like Marlboro, Framingham that we're
It'll
connecting?
connect all the boroughs by doing this. This will start over at Central Street at the lights at Central and Boston Road,
Yep.
at the corner there, and it's really a beautiful trail. My wife grew up over there, so I knew it from when I was young, and it'll be nice if they can do it.
It's been a long-term project, especially in South Borough, to develop this part of the Burroughs Trail to match some of the other parts of the Burroughs Trail. I don't think we can look at it as necessarily a conduit by which, like sidewalks. It's more of a, it certainly serves a slightly different market clientele. I mean, I've walked part of it near the reservoirs.
Yeah.
So it serves as a green space outlet.
Yeah. I mean, I use a ton of the trails that connect along the aqueduct and stuff. So I was having a really hard time just picturing it, and that's all. I think I still can't totally picture where it's happening. I don't know why I was having such a hard time with the maps, but maybe that doesn't matter. Do we have any additional questions we want to ask?
I would say, how functional is the path without the expenditures that we're talking about, and how much more functional will it be with it? It's certainly a good chunk of cash to put into it, and what does the user of the trail see as the big return for it?
Okay. Anything else?
Are we including this feasibility study in the questioning at the moment, or is that the next item?
That's the next item.
Okay.
Anything else on the Peninsula Trail piece? Okay. So the shared use path feasibility study. So this is a fully paved trail, and I believe it connects the Fayville Playground. And I think this one also crosses the reservoir along like the train tracks, right? But this is not for the actual work to be done. It is just for the feasibility to see what we could do there.
I'm sorry, what's that for?
So it is feasibility. So this is connecting from kind of like the downtown area to like near the Fayville Playground, and it goes like
On the
Lawrence
railroad tracks?
not on them, I guess parallel to them. And so this is fully paved, and so the thought this is like a multi-use like path, but it's like a bike path, really.
Along parallel to the railroad track.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And so it's a feasibility study looking at that.
In full disclosure, I reached out to Catherine to let her know that I was very much interested in getting a lot more information about the feasibility of this project having success. As I'm not a big fan of feasibility studies, I still look at this, like I said before, as a possible extension of sidewalk infrastructure in the town. And I would have loved to have this 5 years ago, but I don't want to sink 70 grand unless there's a pretty good record of these sorts of things being done in other towns near us or around us, so that we can be sure that it's money well spent to a next step, not just money spent to find out.
Other towns have done it. I don't know if CSX has allowed it, but they have had paved trails along railroad beds in other towns. I do know that. So precedence has been set with other communities, but again, I don't know if CSX has any appetite for that at all.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's some idea of possible future costs of a project if it was likely to happen, not specific, but a sort of ballpark figure, so that, if it's a large figure and we don't think the town has an appetite for it, maybe this is best funded through, a warrant article for popularity, because then that there's enough support in the town to support the next step after it. I would love to have it, love to know, but I just want to know a little bit more about this one before I jump to fund it.
Okay, so I had, what is the chance that the feasibility study will yield a doable project?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Good way to put it.
Okay. And then the final part, shoot, I didn't write this one down. I didn't write the last two down. Sorry, guys. So shared use feasibility study for the Boston Worcester Airline Trail. So this is another biking trail, another feasibility study. This is a longer one. It's a 5.5 mile trail. $75,000. I think this probably is the same question, right? So we're looking to do a feasibility study. What are we expecting to come out of it?
I would also mention it. It looks like this runs right down that same corridor as the previous feasibility study.
So is this just an extension on it?
It might.
Because this
might
is
be-
longer.
Yes, a much bigger building on it, but it looked like this first rail line feasibility area was in the next study as well.
So we think it covers both. Study Boston Star Airline Trail 75,000. So is the question, does this include the
That would certainly be one of my questions. Yeah. And then the question is, how many other towns are funding anything relating to this that is known about? Because if we're the only one throwing some money into it, then I don't know how it's going to get through any other town.
So it did say, so there's similar efforts in Westboro and Ashland,
Mm.
but I don't know if that's like to connect or if that's like just based on similar projects. Okay. This include shared use path feasibility. I mean, I would assume no, because it's the same amount of money. But
Yeah, I mean, the people that I've talked to in this area that do these sorts of things, they have fairly long time horizons. So I don't look at some of these as being a immediate bang for our buck, and feasibility studies are really.
okay, and so then let's jump to the last one. This is Southborough Trail enhancements. This is smaller stuff.
My understanding is this is equipment, isn't it? Pretty much.
Interpretive signage, benches, boardwalks and small bridges, which I can attest. I was walking on one of the aqueduct trails today and got very wet because there's lots of mud everywhere. Pay for professionals with subject matter expertise to lead guided nature hikes, improving trail experience for individuals with disabilities. It's just a bunch of kind of smaller ways to make the trails nicer. It's $12,500. Any questions or follow-ups there? Again, it's sort of a series of smaller projects. Okay, good. All right, can we run through this and just assign folks out to go and do follow-ups? So we didn't talk about the senior center. Let's talk about the senior center next week. Premium pay. So this is the follow-up on what has already been done, and what kind of upcoming, what's going through the state right now. Do I have a volunteer for this one? I can also do this. I can take this one because it's reaching out to the consultant. Youth and Family Services. I have a volunteer to reach out to Youth and Family Service.
No, I'll take youth and family.
Is that Joe?
Yep, I'll take trails as well.
Okay.
And are you going to
Um,
send that around so we have those questions to?
Yes. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
send it out right after this. MTC was Tony. I'm gonna give him all of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Sidewalks. I feel like we're gonna want to have DPW just come in and have a conversation about it. Is that kind of,
I like that idea.
yeah.
Makes the
Well,
most sense.
Do you want me to just invite Karen to come in?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll find a date for her. We talked about premium pay. I will do that part. A reach out to Jim just to get sort of the details on the timeline for the clickers. Do I volunteer for that one? Mimi?
I-
Okay. ADA compliances, so it's this, and then the one from rec was just the whether or not this is a mandate or if there's a timeline this has to be done with. Someone do
take
that reach
those.
out. Is that Ann?
Yep.
Okay. Lundblad. I'm gonna put you down for the other, for the one to rec too. It's the same question, just to 2 places. Lundblad Field, to volunteer for that one.
Sure.
Is
I'll
that
do it.
John?
Yep.
Okay.
Andrea, back on the premium pay.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to send a message to Gregory Martineau and ask him if there's going to be a proposal from schools about that?
Sure.
Ask for
Yeah.
something more formal.
Yeah. I mean, schools
Okay.
have, yeah, I have received nothing except for the Neary one that was then pulled.
All right, I'll reach out to him and ask if there's actually going to be any proposal from them.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's something similar we should be asking of, right? Because anyone who's working in the townhouse too, right, would be eligible.
DPW,
I mean, there's so many people that would be eligible for this.
a couple of people from facilities that were doing the cleanings and things like that.
Yeah, there's a huge list.
We could reach out to
Before-
Mark Purple if we have any interest in knowing, we could reach Mark Purple. And just
Yeah,
see the
I can
number
send him a
involved.
note and just ask sort of if they've looked at how many employees would be
Included, yeah.
included. Okay. Let me just make a note. To email. Consultant and Mark Purple. Available in town. Okay. Okay. The town meeting approval for Board of Health. It's a couple different questions for Board of Health. I can take this one. I've talked to Chelsea a couple times around that, and I can just kick the other questions to her as well.
Thank you.
National Grid. So this is a reach out to select board to see if this wants to become more of a project.
I can reach out on that one.
Okay. Nothing for historic. This one on the zoning laws. So this is to ShopSee to see if there's any additional information that would come from this. Kind of
I
volunteer.
can take that because I'm on ShopSee and I'll be at their next meeting. So,
Okay. Do you want to take all the ShopSee
yeah.
questions? Okay. And trails, Joe, you said you want to do trails?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I am realizing as we get to the end of this that I didn't ask anyone to do minutes. Is there anyone who wants to go back and watch this to do minutes?
I haven't even finished my
Not I
minutes
can-
from last time, so I
I know,
apologize.
I know. We said we had a bunch of them.
I'll go back and do it.
You'll do it,
no
Joe?
worries.
Okay, thank you. Good. So that ends that. Looking at the rest of our agenda. So in terms of next steps, everyone has the follow-ups to do for next week. We'll circle back. So next week we'll have the preliminary results for the survey. So we can take a look at those if there's any discussion we had there. And I think we just go back through the questions and figure out what our answers are. And if there's at that point, we feel like there's anyone that we still need more information on and want to invite to come and talk to us at a future meeting, because we'll only have a couple meetings left at that point. And I'll make sure we have DPW scheduled. Does that make sense? Okay. We don't have any minutes to vote on this week. I don't believe we have any additional unfinished business. I know we are significantly over, but want to give folks the opportunity to give public comment if there's anyone who wants to comment. And we still have 4 folks. Thank you for hanging on late. Okay, I see Kevin Miller. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi there, ARPA Committee.
Hello.
Just a quick thought, and again, I'm sort of representing the interest of the Historical Commission in our proposal. And I just wanted to point out, appreciate they don't have any questions for us, but I did want to point out that this proposal dovetails very nicely with the interest of a number of other constituencies in town. Number one, I think it works well with the EDC's efforts to create more of a sense of place in the downtown and to stoke a kind of identity and economic activity there. Secondly, town voters approved $3.2 million to renovate the townhouse. And one of the signs, one of the plaques that we proposed is ticketed for the townhouse. And it would be the kind of cherry on the sundae to complete those renovations when they're finished. Thirdly, at their February, I believe, 15th meeting, the select board discussed the charge to seat a 300th anniversary committee. That's for the tercentenary celebration or the tricentennial of the town, which will be in 2027. And I'm hard pressed to think of a more impressive or attention-grabbing way to perhaps kick off the drive to celebrate Southborough's 300th anniversary of incorporation than the unveiling of signs marking the nationally recognized historic downtown Southborough district. So I just wanted to make those 3 points, and I thank you again for all your efforts and giving me the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Any other public comment? No. Okay. So if not, then our next meeting is next Thursday. I think we have 2 Thursday meetings left, and then we switch to the Tuesday rotation, but don't quote me on that. There might be 3, but next week should still be Thursday. Same time, same place, unless anyone has a strong anybody who can't do it, assuming not. Okay. Good. Then that's all I have.
Motion to
Anything-
adjourn.
Thanks, Joe. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Is that you, Mimi? All right, we'll go around. Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Martell,
Aye.
Ms. Rubenstein,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Ms. Luttrell.
Aye.
And I will also vote aye. So with that, it is 9:55 and we are adjourned. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Good
Take
seeing
care.
you.
Bye.